So I wanted to walk you through the way I annotate a text. Learning how to annotate texts is good because it keeps you from having to continuously go back and reread work that you've already read. So if you make good notes on the text the first time through, you don't have to then keep returning to the text to remember what that article was about or what you thought about it. So this is one of the texts that you're reading, From Knowledge to Knowledgeable, Learning in New Media Environments. And new media only, refers to, of course, digital environments, right? This is a catch term to kind of encompass all of those environments. So one of the things I do when I find something electronically is I make a note of the access date. That is the date that I found this when I find it electronically. I found this on the 3rd of February, and I like to make a note of where I found it. I got it in Academic Commons, which is an online resource. So when I annotate, I do a couple of things. Sometimes I ask questions, sometimes I make notes about what I like, sometimes I write clarifying notes. It just depends. But I really try to make the text mine. So one thing I like about this article is this term right here, knowledgeable. So he's doing sort of this play on words, right? About knowledgeable to knowledgeable, able to utilize knowledge. So I like that. I like this sort of play on words. And it is, I think, exactly the challenge we have in digital spaces, because it's one thing to know that information's out there. It's another thing kind of to know what to do with that information, or how to decide of all the information out there, what's the best information to use, what should we use. So I just want to walk you through this and show you some of my annotations. I try not to highlight too much, because I find I go crazy with a highlighter, and then before I know it, I've highlighted everything, which kind of defeats the purpose of highlighting. Okay. So what I like to do though is if I've highlighted something, I want to go back in and make, in my own words, some kind of notation to remember why I highlighted that part, why I was in. Here I've made a notation about what this section I've highlighted is talking about. So I wrote, students need to be able to locate and create information. Another big point from this article that I thought was important to remember was this one, that the old school way of teaching is the method of recall, memorize, and know information. So with new media environments, what we are starting to learn and think about is what to do with just the tons and tons of material and information that we can access, and how do we transfer that into knowledge. How do we become knowledge-able people? On the second page, you can see that I've highlighted a good bit and annotated in several places. So again, I just wanted to give you a sense of what I do after I've highlighted. So in my own words, I've rephrased part of the article here. I wrote, we do different things with digital information than we do with words on a page. And then here, the writer talked about something that reinforces a belief that's important to me, which is writing that's interactive, a conversation. So I liked that. Over here, there were 4 points I wanted to remember. And this part here is, in the article, is talking about the old school way of teaching and passing along information. So it was these 4 points, right? That information is scarce. So in order to get it, you've got to go to a place, i.e. the classroom, the lecture hall. And there's a source of information, and it's the teacher. And you trust that teacher's authority, right? Number 3, trusting authority. And the whole lecture format really reinforces this 4th point, which is good information needs no discussion. So that's why in the old school way of learning and the old models of education, it is this idea that there's the big lecture hall, the teacher's in front of the room, the teacher is the location of all the knowledge, and all you have to do is show up, write down the information, memorize it, kind of back what we learned on this first page, be able to recall it for a test, and that's how you know things. So this article is sort of calling that into question. And I made a note here that the kind of learning described, it is a 1950s model and a 1950s mentality. So it's got to change. And this is me having a conversation with the text, right? So this guy is making me think. And that's the best thing that can happen when you read something. It can actually make you think and have something to say in response. So now I'm engaging in a conversation with this writer. And here's what I want to ask. Why does education persist in this retrograde way? Is it about money? Is it, too expensive to change how classrooms are set up, to retrain teachers? Is it too expensive to redesign rooms? Because part of what he's talking about is literally the way the rooms are set up and how they're not really conducive to learning. And so you'll see on this page I highlighted quite a bit, but not too much. I didn't go too crazy. And in each case, again, I have made some notes about what spoke to me. Okay. I don't have to go over every single note. Continuing through the article, I've highlighted some more areas, made some more notes. Again, I'm engaging in a conversation with this writer, right? Then, a concluding part of the article is recounting an experiment that this writer did with one of his classes. I think it was an anthropology class. Okay, so I make a note here. I draw an arrow, say all the rest of this is the experiment. The experiment was interesting. I did read it, but I don't really need to know about that experiment to make meaning of this article. It doesn't matter to me. So I didn't include any of that information in my note taking. And I have a final comment here, which comes from this last paragraph. So questioning equals learning. Questioning is how we grow and challenge the status quo. All right, so these are my notes from this article. This is an example of annotating a text.